Hotel manager kicks out poor boy, not knowing he's the restaurant owner's son. The scream ripped through the Grand Aurelius lobby like a gunshot. A sharp heel struck forward, leather slamming into a small leg, and a child's body lurched sideways across the polished marble. Guests froze mid-step. A violin note from the live quartet cracked and died. Someone gasped so loudly it echoed off the chandeliers. The boy's palm scraped the floor as he tried to catch himself, fingers skidding through a spill of champagne and shattered glass. The hotel manager's voice cut through the chaos, cold, furious, unyielding. "I said out." Her heel hovered for a second strike, daring anyone to stop her. He didn't scream back. That was what made it worse. The boy clenched his jaw, swallowed his pain, and lifted his eyes wide, dark, stunned, not in defiance, but in confusion, like the world had just broken a promise he didn't know how to name. The manager seized his wrist and yanked him upright. The boy's shoes left faint streaks on the marble as she dragged him toward the doors. Phones rose. Whispers ignited. The revolving doors began to turn. And in that suspended moment, while the entire hotel watched a child being thrown out like trash, a chain of consequences snapped into motion that would tear reputations apart and flip the power of this building inside out. The boy's name was Eli Carter. He was 11 years old, and he had come to the Grand Aurelius because his father told him to. Eli had memorized the building the way kids memorize safe places. The tall glass doors, the gold-lettered sign, the smell polish, citrus money. His father had said it would be crowded tonight, that the restaurant downstairs was booked solid, that a VIP tasting was happening. "If you get here before me," his father had said, crouching to Eli's height, "stand by the concierge and ask for Aurelius Dining. Tell them you're my son." He'd smiled when he said it, the kind of smile that meant certainty. So Eli came early. He wore his cleanest shirt, the one with the small tear near the hem he kept forgetting to sew. He walked because the bus was late. He arrived nervous but hopeful. And the moment he stepped inside, the air changed. The Grand Aurelius wasn't just luxury, it was judgment wrapped in velvet. The lobby glowed with chandeliers the size of small planets. Marble floors reflected faces like mirrors. Guests moved with practiced ease, as if they belonged here by birthright. Eli felt it immediately, the invisible line. He crossed it anyway. He stood near the concierge desk, careful not to touch anything. He rehearsed the words under his breath. When the attendant looked up, Eli spoke softly. "Hi, I'm looking for my dad. He's at the restaurant." That was when Veronica Halley noticed him. Veronica didn't see children. She saw disruptions. Years of running elite hotels had sharpened her instincts into blades. She clocked the dirt on his pants, the scuffed shoes, the way nearby guests glanced and frowned. She didn't ask questions because questions took time, and time allowed problems to grow. "Excuse me," Veronica said, stepping in with a smile that never reached her eyes. "You shouldn't be here." Eli blinked. My dad said to wait inside." "Who is your father?" Veronica asked, already irritated. "He's at Aurelius Dining," Eli said. "He told me." Her smile vanished. "Enough." The word landed hard. "We don't allow children to wander the lobby," she snapped, her voice rising just enough for people to hear. "And we certainly don't allow lying." "I'm not lying," Eli said quickly. His hand slid into his pocket, touching the folded note his father had given him just in case. Security hovered. Two guards exchanged a look. One of them knelt slightly, lowering his voice. "Hey, kid, maybe wait outside, okay?" Eli shook his head. His throat tightened. "Please. He's my dad." That was when Veronica decided to make an example. Her heel moved before anyone could react. Not a full kick, calculated, controlled, enough to shove, enough to humiliate, enough to show the room who had authority. Eli went down. The sound bone on stone-turned stomachs. A woman near the elevators covered her mouth. Someone swore under their breath. Veronica grabbed Eli's wrist and hauled him up, her grip bruising. "You don't come in here and scam people," she hissed. "Not in my hotel." She dragged him toward the exit as if he weighed nothing. The doors burst open. Cold air rushed in. Rain speckled the marble threshold. Veronica shoved him forward. Eli stumbled, caught himself on the doorframe, and turned his head once, searching the lobby, scanning faces, looking for one person. He didn't see his father. The doors closed. Inside, the hotel exhaled. Veronica straightened her vest, already done. "Clean that," she said, nodding at the glass. "And make sure he doesn't come back." Applause started somewhere near the windows. Nervous, polite, relieved, but not everyone clapped. Near the entrance to Aurelius Dining, the Mater D stood frozen, his face pale, eyes locked on the doors. A server whispered something. Another leaned in closer. "That kid," the Mater D said slowly, dread creeping into his voice. "He looks like Mr. Carter." In the kitchen below, Marcus Carter wiped his hands on a towel and checked the time. He was smiling. His son should have been here by now. Marcus Carter wasn't just the man behind Aurelius Dining. He built it. He owned it. And he had very clear rules about how people were treated in his house. Outside, rain soaked through Eli's shirt. He hugged himself, trembling not from pain, but from the sting of being unseen. He didn't run. He didn't cry. He waited. Because his father had told him one more thing. "If something feels wrong," Marcus had said, "stand your ground. Truth always finds its way back." Inside the Grand Aurelius Hotel, the truth was already walking down the stairs. The rain outside thickened, drumming against the glass doors in a steady, merciless rhythm, but inside the Grand Aurelius, the air grew tight and brittle. Word traveled the way it always did in places built on silence and status, not loudly, not openly, but fast. A whisper here. A look there. A server paused too long at a doorway. A manager's jaw clenched as he watched Veronica Hawley stride across the lobby like nothing had happened. She believed the problem was solved. Veronica had built her career on control. 38 years old. Impeccable posture. A resume stacked with 5-star properties and glowing references from people who never asked questions. She ran the Grand Aurelius with surgical precision, no chaos, no surprises, no stains on the brand. And in her mind, Eli Carter had been exactly that, a stain. She stepped behind the concierge desk and lowered her voice. "Security," she said calmly. "If that child tries to come back in, call the police." The word police was chosen carefully. It drew a line. It warned the staff not to soften. One of the guards hesitated. "Ma'am." He didn't seem dangerous. Veronica's eyes flicked to him like knives. "Do you want to explain to our guests why we allow vagrants to harass them?" That ended the discussion. Downstairs, the kitchen of Aurelius Dining hummed with controlled chaos. Knives flashed. Pans hissed. Plates slid into perfect formation under heat lamps. Marcus Carter stood at the pass, tall and composed, his dark hair threaded with gray at the temples. To most of the staff he was intimidating, not because he raised his voice, but because he never had to. He checked his watch again. "Has anyone seen my son?" He asked casually, but the question carried weight. The kitchen went quiet. A line cook swallowed. "We thought he was with you, sir." Marcus frowned just slightly. "He said he'd come straight here." The Mater D appeared at the kitchen door, his face strained. "Mr. Carter," he said, voice low. "There was." An incident upstairs. Marcus turned. In the lobby, the Mater D continued. A boy was removed by management, forcefully. Marcus didn't speak. He just listened. They said he claimed his father worked at the restaurant. The Mater D added, his voice barely above a whisper. Sir, he looked like you. For a moment, the world narrowed to a single point. Marcus handed the towel to a sous chef. Cover the pass. He walked out of the kitchen. Each step up the stairs felt heavier than the last. Marcus didn't run. He didn't shout. He moved with the calm of a man who had spent decades learning what panic destroyed and patience revealed. Staff flattened against walls as he passed. Heads turned. Conversations died. By the time he reached the lobby, Veronica was laughing softly with a guest near the front desk. Apologies again for the disruption. She was saying smoothly, "We take our guests' comfort very seriously." Marcus stopped 10 feet away. "Veronica," he said. She turned, startled. "Mr. Carter, I didn't realize you were. Where is my son?" The lobby froze. Veronica's smile faltered. "Your son?" "The boy you removed," Marcus said evenly. "Where is he?" A flicker of irritation crossed her face before she masked it. "Sir, with respect, we removed a child who was trespassing and causing." Marcus took one step closer. His voice didn't rise. It dropped. "You put your hands on my child." The word child landed like a verdict. Guests leaned in. Phones came out again. The concierge stared straight ahead, pretending not to exist. Veronica straightened. "Mr. Carter, I did what was necessary to protect the hotel." Marcus's eyes didn't leave hers. "This hotel does not belong to you." A murmur rippled through the room. "I am responsible for this property during my shift." Veronica snapped, her composure cracking. "And I will not apologize for maintaining standards." Marcus looked past her, toward the doors. Rain streaked the glass. Outside, a small figure sat on the steps, knees pulled to his chest. Marcus exhaled slowly. "Security," he said, not raising his voice. "Bring my son inside now." The guards moved instantly. Veronica stepped forward. "You can't." Marcus turned to her. "You are done speaking." Eli felt the warmth hit him first. Then the hands on his shoulders, gentle, careful. He looked up, startled, and saw his father's face. "The dam broke." "I tried," Eli said, his voice shaking. "I told them." "I waited." Marcus knelt in front of him, ignoring the crowd. He brushed rain from Eli's hair, checked his scraped palms, the swelling on his leg. His jaw tightened, but his hands were steady. "You did everything right," Marcus said softly. "Everything." When he stood, he didn't face Veronica. He faced the room. "My name is Marcus Carter," he said. "I own Aurelius Dining. And until this moment, I believe this hotel shared our values." Silence. "I was wrong." Veronica felt the room turn against her. "Sir, this is a misunderstanding." "No," Marcus said. "It's a pattern." He gestured toward Eli. "My son was judged by his clothes, by his appearance, by the assumption that he did not belong." He looked directly at Veronica. "That assumption came from you." Veronica's voice sharpened. "Are you accusing me of—" "I am stating facts," Marcus replied. "And facts have consequences." He turned to the concierge. "Call the board. Call the owner of this property. Tell them I am withdrawing Aurelius Dining effective immediately." Gasps exploded across the lobby. "You can't do that," Veronica said, panic creeping in. "You're under contract." Marcus smiled faintly. "Read it again." The color drained from her face. Aurelius Dining wasn't just a restaurant, it was the jewel of the hotel. Michelin starred. Booked months out. Its departure would gut the Grand Aurelius overnight. Marcus looked at his son. "Do you want to leave?" Eli hesitated. He glanced around the lobby, the chandeliers, the guests, the woman who had kicked him. Then he nodded. "Yes," he said. Marcus took his hand. As they walked toward the doors, Veronica found her voice. "You're making a mistake," she called after him. One incident, Marcus stopped at the threshold and turned back. "You didn't make one mistake," he said. "You made a choice." The doors closed behind them. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. Inside, the Grand Aurelius began to crack. And Veronica Hawley, standing alone in the center of the lobby she thought she controlled, realized she was no longer the most powerful person in the room, not even close. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It crept in quiet, suffocating, unavoidable. By morning, the Grand Aurelius woke to an unfamiliar sound. Silence. No early deliveries for Aurelius Dining. No line of black cars dropping off VIP guests for lunch reservations that no longer existed. The velvet rope at the restaurant entrance was gone, rolled up and stored like a body after a crime. Staff whispered as they passed it, as if speaking too loudly might summon what they all feared. Veronica Hawley hadn't slept. She sat in her office before sunrise, staring at her reflection in the darkened window. The city outside glowed indifferently. Her phone buzzed nonstop on the desk, emails from corporate, texts from regional directors, missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize but already dreaded. At 6:14 a.m., the first headline appeared. Renowned restaurateur pulls out of Grand Aurelius after child ejection incident. At 6:19 a.m., a video surfaced. It wasn't clear at first, shaky, filmed from behind a potted palm. But the angle was unmistakable. Veronica's heel. Eli stumbling. The lobby gasping. The caption was short and lethal. Luxury hotel manager kicks out child. Turns out he's the owner's son. By 7 a.m., it was everywhere. Inside Marcus Carter's townhouse, the mood was different. Quiet, but not heavy. Eli sat at the kitchen table with a mug of hot chocolate, his hands wrapped around it like a shield. A bandage covered his scraped palm. Marcus stood by the counter, phone pressed to his ear, his expression unreadable. "No interviews," he said calmly. "Not yet." He listened. Nodded once. "I'll handle it." He hung up and turned to Eli. "You okay?" Eli nodded, then hesitated. "Am I in trouble?" Marcus walked over and knelt beside him. "No," he said firmly. "You were brave." Eli looked down. She didn't even listen. Marcus exhaled. Some people don't until they're forced to. Back at the hotel, the board convened an emergency call. Faces filled the conference screen, men and women in tailored suits, all with the same tight expression. "This is a disaster," one of them said. "Aurelius Dining accounted for nearly 40% of our prestige bookings." Another leaned forward. "We've lost 2 corporate contracts already." They cited reputational concerns. All eyes turned to Veronica. She straightened. "With respect, this is being blown out of proportion." "The child was 11, a board member cut in sharply. "And you kicked him." "I removed him," Veronica snapped. "For the safety of our guests." Silence followed. "Veronica," the chairwoman said slowly, "did you verify his claim?" Veronica hesitated. "No," she admitted. The chairwoman closed her eyes. "We are placing you on administrative leave," she said. "Effective immediately." Veronica's breath caught. "You can't, we already have." The screen went dark. By noon, protesters gathered outside the hotel. Signs rose. Cameras flashed. Guests canceled en masse. The once pristine lobby filled with tension instead of perfume. Inside a quiet cafe across town, Marcus met with the hotel's owner, a silver-haired man whose confidence had evaporated overnight. "This can still be fixed," the owner said desperately. "We'll issue a public apology. Fire her. Donate to a charity." Marcus sipped his coffee. "You don't fix a broken spine with a bandage." The owner swallowed. "What do you want?" Marcus leaned forward. "Change." The next day, a press conference was announced. The ballroom filled fast. Reporters crowded shoulder to shoulder. Cameras trained on the stage where two podiums stood, one for the hotel, one empty. Marcus arrived with Eli beside him. The room went still. Marcus spoke first. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't embellish. He told the truth. He described the phone call to his son, the instructions, the trust. He described walking into the lobby and seeing the mark on Eli's leg. He described what it felt like to realize power had been used to humiliate a child. "This is not about revenge," Marcus said. "It's about responsibility." He gestured to Eli. "My son didn't want an apology. He wanted to be seen." Then he stepped aside. The hotel owner approached the podium alone. His voice shook as he announced sweeping changes: new leadership, mandatory bias training, and independent oversight committee. Veronica Hale's name was never mentioned, but everyone knew. After the conference, Eli tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "Is it over?" Marcus looked at him. "Almost. Because consequences didn't end at headlines." Days later, Veronica sat in her apartment, curtains drawn, watching the city she once ruled move on without her. No calls came anymore. Her name was poison. A knock sounded at the door. She opened it to find a courier holding an envelope. Inside was a single page. A civil lawsuit. Filed by Marcus Carter. Not for money. For accountability. Veronica sank into a chair, hands shaking. For the first time since that day, she saw it not the lobby, not the guests, but the boy's eyes. Confused, hurt, unseen. And she understood something too late. Power didn't protect her anymore. It had exposed her. Outside, the Grand Aurelius stood tall and silent, its golden letters already dimming. And across the city, a father and son walked forward, no longer invisible, no longer ignored, carrying with them a truth the world could no longer look away from. The courtroom didn't look like the lobby of the Grand Aurelius, but Veronica Hale felt the same pressure pressing in on her chest. Here, there were no chandeliers to hide under, no uniform to signal authority, no staff waiting for her command. Just rows of wooden benches, a judge seated above everyone, and the quiet understanding that this room did not care who she used to be. Marcus Carter arrived early, as always. He wore a simple dark suit, nothing flashy, nothing that announced wealth. Eli walked beside him, a little taller now, shoulders straighter than they'd been weeks ago. The boy looked around with curiosity, not fear. He had learned something powerful since that night at the hotel. Places lost their power when you understood the truth inside them. Veronica entered through a side door. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. She felt it, the weight of recognition, stripped of respect. Her attorney whispered something she didn't hear. Her eyes found Marcus despite herself. He didn't look at her. The judge entered. Everyone stood. When they sat again, the case began, not with drama, but with precision. Marcus's attorney didn't shout. She didn't accuse. She laid out facts like stones, one after another, impossible to ignore. Security footage, witness statements, staff emails. The video that had gone viral, slowed down frame by frame, showing Veronica's heel connecting with Eli's leg. Showing his fall. Showing her grip on his wrist. The courtroom didn't look like the lobby of the Grand Aurelius, but Veronica Hale felt the same pressure pressing in on her chest. Here, There were no chandeliers to hide under, no uniform to signal authority, no staff waiting for her command. Just rows of wooden benches, a judge seated above everyone, and the quiet understanding that this room did not care who she used to be. Marcus Carter arrived early, as always. He wore a simple dark suit, nothing flashy, nothing that announced wealth. Eli walked beside him, a little taller now, shoulders straighter than they'd been weeks ago. The boy looked around with curiosity, not fear. He had learned something powerful since that night at the hotel. Places lost their power when you understood the truth inside them. Veronica entered through a side door. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. She felt it, the weight of recognition, stripped of respect. Her attorney whispered something she didn't hear. Her eyes found Marcus despite herself. He didn't look at her. The judge entered. Everyone stood. When they sat again, the case began not with drama, but with precision. Marcus's attorney didn't shout. She didn't accuse. She laid out facts like stones, one after another, impossible to ignore. Security footage, witness statements, staff emails. The video that had gone viral slowed down frame by frame, showing Veronica's heel connecting with Eli's leg, showing his fall, showing her grip on his wrist. Veronica watched herself on the screen and felt something crack. Then Eli was called. The room tensed. Marcus stood when his son did, placing a hand lightly on his shoulder. Just tell the truth, he said softly. Eli walked to the stand alone. He answered every question clearly. What he'd been told. What he'd said. How it felt when he was kicked, not the pain, he explained, but the confusion. I thought I'd done something wrong, he said. But I hadn't. The judge leaned forward. When you were outside, the judge asked, what did you do? Eli thought for a moment. I waited. My dad said truth catches up. The courtroom was silent. When Veronica's attorney cross-examined, the questions came sharper. Why didn't he leave immediately? Why didn't he show proof? Why didn't he ask someone else? Eli answered the last one quietly. I didn't know I had to prove I mattered. Something shifted then, not loudly, but deeply. When Veronica took the stand, her voice shook despite her effort. She spoke of standards, of safety, of pressure. She said she hadn't known. She said she'd never meant to hurt anyone. Marcus stood when it was his turn. Ms. Hawley, he said evenly, did you believe my son belonged in that lobby? Veronica hesitated. No, she said finally. Marcus nodded. That is all. The verdict came later that afternoon. The judge ruled in Marcus's favor. Not a massive financial award, just enough to signal accountability. But the real weight was in the ruling itself. Wrongful conduct. Abuse of authority. Mandatory professional sanctions. Veronica's hotel management license was suspended indefinitely. When the gavel fell, it echoed longer than any applause ever had in the Grand Aurelius. Outside the courthouse, reporters surged forward, but Marcus shielded Eli with his body. No more questions, Marcus said calmly. This story is finished. But it wasn't, because Marcus Carter wasn't done changing things. Weeks later, a press release went out, not from a hotel, not from a court, but from Aurelius Dining. Marcus announced a new initiative, a hospitality training foundation focused on ethical leadership, dignity, and bias prevention. Scholarships for service workers. Mandatory programs for managers across partnered hotels and restaurants nationwide. The foundation's name surprised everyone. The Eli Standard. When asked why, Marcus answered simply, because the standard should be how we treat the least powerful person in the room. The Grand Aurelius reopened months later under new leadership. The chandeliers still sparkled. The marble still gleamed. But something was different. Security no longer judged first. Managers listened. Policies changed not on paper, but in practice. Guests noticed. So did staff. As for Veronica Hale, she took a job far from luxury hotels, an administrative role at a small regional inn. No authority. No spotlight. Just work. For the first time in her career, she was invisible. And slowly, painfully, she learned what that felt like. One afternoon, months later, she saw a boy standing in the lobby of that inn, muddy shoes, nervous eyes, waiting for someone. For a split second, instinct flared. Then she stopped. She knelt instead. "Can I help you?" she asked quietly. The boy smiled with relief. Veronica watched him run into his father's arms moments later and felt the sting of understanding settle where pride once lived. Across town, Eli and Marcus sat at a small diner sharing fries. "Dad?" Eli asked. "Do you think she learned?" Marcus smiled faintly. "I think the world did." Eli nodded, satisfied. Outside, people passed by without noticing them. No cameras. No judgment. Just a father and son, equal at the table. And somewhere between the noise of the city and the quiet of that moment, the balance finally felt right.